Israeli forces intensify Gaza City offensive as tanks push deeper. US vetoes UN resolution demanding Gaza ceasefire and unrestricted aid. And the UN chief warns of global crisis, urges leaders to push for world peace. Israeli forces intensified their offensive on Gaza City with explosions lighting up the sky overnight as tanks advanced deeper into the enclave. At least 4 fireballs were seen over Gaza in the early hours of Friday following a day of heavy ground movements. Israeli tanks pushed forward along 2 main gateways to the city while internet and phone lines were cut for several hours, signaling an escalation in operations. Hundreds of thousands remain trapped in Gaza City, many sheltering in battered homes or makeshift tents as the fighting intensifies. Palestinians are fleeing northern Gaza with belongings in hand as Israel intensifies its ground operations around Gaza City. Cars, trucks, carts, and even families on foot crowded the coastal road southward, while Israeli tanks advanced through 2 main gateways into central Gaza City. Internet and phone lines were cut for hours on Thursday, raising fears of further escalation. The UN says hundreds of thousands have already fled since Israel declared plans in August to seize the city, though many remain sheltering in ruined homes or makeshift tents. Health officials in Gaza say the Palestinian death toll has surpassed 65,000 since the war began last October, with more than 165,000 others wounded. Authorities reported 79 deaths and 228 injuries in the past 24 hours alone, as hospitals remain overwhelmed. They also confirmed additional fatalities from famine and malnutrition, including a child, underscoring the deepening humanitarian crisis in the enclave. The conflict, now in its 12th month, continues to exact a devastating toll on civilians. The United States has vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza and the lifting of all restrictions on humanitarian aid. The draft, introduced by 10 elected council members, received 14 votes in favor, but Washington cast the lone dissenting vote, blocking its adoption. The text also demanded the unconditional and dignified release of all detainees held by all parties. The U.S., as a permanent council member, has veto power and has previously blocked resolutions critical of Israel or unfavorable to its position. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the war is costing Israel heavily, but vowed it will not retreat until all objectives are met. Netanyahu said the army is striking Hamas hard and will not stop until the mission is complete. He insisted the conflict will continue until Israel achieves its declared goals in Gaza, despite the growing toll. Gaza's health ministry says 800,000 Palestinians in Gaza City are facing catastrophic conditions as hospitals operate far beyond capacity. Officials reported that the few hospitals still functioning in the city are overcrowded, operating at more than 250% capacity and providing only limited services. The ministry warned the crisis is worsening as casualties continue to rise. Palestinian statistics show about 740,000 people remain in northern Gaza, representing 35% of the Strip's total population. The Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics said the numbers reflect a grim demographic shift, with northern Gaza turning from a key population hub into a center of renewed displacement amid insecurity and lack of basic humanitarian services. The World Health Organization has condemned what it calls inhumane conditions in Gaza as Israel intensifies its assault on the territory's largest urban center. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said Israel's military incursion and evacuation orders in northern Gaza are driving new waves of displacement, forcing already traumatized families into an ever-shrinking areas. His remarks came at a press conference in Geneva as aid agencies warn the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is worsening by the day.
Yesterday, the Al-Rantisi hospital was attacked while
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and US President Donald Trump say they agree on the need for a peace roadmap in Gaza, though they differ on recognition of a Palestinian state. After a bilateral meeting in London, Starmer said both leaders agreed that the situation in Gaza is intolerable and that a roadmap towards peace is essential. But Trump told reporters he disagreed with countries recognizing Palestine, calling it one of the few differences he has with the British Prime Minister. The meeting comes amid mounting pressure on world leaders to chart a path out of the conflict.
They're going to put the hostages up as bait. They're going to put the hostages in front of any attack. And that's pretty brutal. We haven't heard that one in a long time.
And for more analysis, we now move to Mark Summers in our newsroom. To you, Mark.
Thank you, Mona. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And we are now joined from Cairo by the international relations expert, Ahmed El-Aneni. Thank you very much for being here with us on Qnews. So how does the US veto of a Security Council ceasefire resolution affect Washington's credibility in pushing for a peace roadmap?
Definitely, this veto affects the ceasefire and the ongoing conflict in Gaza Strip and the peace processes in the region. The political deals of the United States should be reconsidered. They should have other calculations. Donald Trump, the US president, always calls for achieving peace in the region and talks about ceasefire in Gaza, and he says that he has political solution that he can propose and submit to the allies in the region. We're talking about Egypt. Egypt is a great player in the region. Egypt, with its geographic nature and with its respect, everyone respects Cairo, in fact. This is a fact, and it makes a great role in the mediation process. This veto, of course, affects the peace process in the region, and the United States takes the side of Israel in the latest war. If we want to have actual solutions, the United States should reconsider the use of veto towards the situation in Gaza now, at least from a humanitarian perspective, especially with the fact that what's happening over there violates the international humanitarian law. We're talking about 14 countries in the Security Council have voted in favor of the resolution, the non-permanent and the permanent member states. So the whole United Nations and the Security Council, all of them agree on stopping this war and continuing the negotiations. I think veto further complicates everything, but we depend on the mediators and the dynamic foreign policy of Cairo and its close relation with the United States and the European Union member states. Egypt and Qatar are both partners in this file. In the upcoming period, we may witness pressure being practiced over the United States, especially with some European countries taking a positive direction towards the mediators in the region. For example, Britain that changed its situation, Spain and France that suspended and intercepted weapon shipment that was supposed to go to Israel. All of these things serve the stability of the region. So
yes, let me just interrupt you there, because you mentioned Britain just now. Of course, Donald Trump has been on a state visit, an official state visit to the United Kingdom this week. But there is a difference or a disagreement between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump about recognizing Palestine as an official state. Could that have some implications, some fallout?
definitely, this hinders and delays the recognition of the state of Palestine from the side of the United States. We're talking about the United States. Indeed, there will be a resolution with consensus from the General Assembly and the European Union member states that changed their stance. But we're talking about the United States, the one that has a pressure cord over the Israeli side. We're talking about a political perspective, a strategic perspective. The only one who can practice pressure on Israel is Donald Trump. The current U.S. administration can do this when it comes to the files of the two-state solution, bringing peace, and the negotiations. Most of the countries in the region, on top of them Egypt, all of them have a long-term vision. They do not only talk about the ceasefire, because the ceasefire is not the permanent solution. The permanent solution lies in the negotiations and the pressure being practiced by the United States on Israel to continue negotiations. Then there should be an international conference that sets the headlines. These headlines should bring together the Israeli side, if they have the political will, with the Palestinians in order to work on the two-state solution. Indeed, the United States and the United Kingdom both have mutual visions, and sometimes they disagree because the United States has a slightly different policy from the European Union. Some European Union member states have changed their stances at the political level, but at the strategic level, they're still the same. But we're talking about the United States that has political keys and has diplomatic and military solutions, because the United States supports Israel militarily. If the United States is convinced with this, we will see a change. I'd like also to add something. The tools owned by the GCC and Cairo, because Cairo is a strategic ally to the United States, and the GCC are considered differently by Donald Trump. He takes care of them because they have an economic tool. There are lots of investments from Qatar, Emirates, and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, and Donald Trump depends on these investments. So the timing for taking a certain stance and a mutual Arab vision will provide solution to this crisis, especially with the existence of Donald Trump. They can make use of his existence because Donald Trump gives priority to the economic file. He's a businessman at the end of the day, and he wants to achieve the interests of the United States. He will not support Netanyahu for nothing. He takes into consideration the American interest in the region, the investments in the region.
Okay, let me just cut in there again, if I can. Netanyahu said only a few days ago that striking Qatar, that strike on Doha, would bring the war to an end, and now he's intensifying Israel's ground offensive in Gaza City. What does that say about when we're going to see an end to this war?
This war, from my own point of view, is highly escalated, unfortunately, by the Israeli side. There is no political will. And with the support of the United States, helped further in the escalation of this war. If Donald Trump tries to have a broader look on the future, on the whole region, and goes beyond the Israeli interests, this will serve the stability of the region. Egypt has warned several times. The last time was in the speech by President Sisi. He warned against the regional war, and we have seen the consequences of the 12-day war between Iran and Israel. The conflict was extended, and now it included the proxy and the allies of Iran in the region. I think this is a positive point, and the key players in the region now are working in this point, including Cairo in partnership with the GCC, particularly Saudi Arabia and Emirates and other Islamic countries. What happens inside Gaza is the result of the existence of an extreme right-wing government in Israel that
Indeed,
does not care
and I think that's very much the case. But I'm sorry to cut you off again, but unfortunately we're just out of time. We need to go back to our studio from Cairo. That was the international relations expert, Ahmed El-Anani. And back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for the analysis. And back to our bulletin, UN staff in Geneva have honored the 370 colleagues killed in Gaza, calling for an end to the war. Several hundred employees from different UN agencies gathered outside headquarters for a minute of silence before laying white roses in tribute. Organizers said the ceremony was both a memorial and a call for peace as the conflict continues to claim lives in the enclave. In Athens, members of Greece's Communist Party staged a protest on the Acropolis, unfurling banners condemning Israel over the war in Gaza. Two large banners in Greek and English reading "Stop the Genocide" and "Free Palestine" were dropped from the ancient monuments. The Communist Party said it wanted to send a message from a global cultural landmark against what is called the barbarity of imperialist war. The group has organized repeated protests demanding recognition of a Palestinian state and an end to Greek cooperation with Israel. Athens has called for an end to the war and backed an Arab plan for Gaza's post-war reconstruction. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says Spain backs the EU Commission's proposal to freeze trade agreement with Israel over the war in Gaza. Speaking in Madrid after talks with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Sanchez said Spain's stance is guided by geopolitical and human rights concerns. He criticized the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's strategy, saying indiscriminate attacks on civilians cannot defeat terrorism, citing the toll of more than 60,000 people who were killed. The leaders also discussed solar energy cooperation and progress on the European Future Combat Air System fighter jet project. Luxembourg's Prime Minister Luc Frieden says next week's UN summit in New York will mark a key moment as more countries prepare to recognize a Palestinian state. Frieden told AFP that Luxembourg will join French President Emmanuel Macron's initiative as momentum builds behind formal recognition of Palestine. He described the move as part of the long road to peace amid growing international condemnation of Israel's nearly two-year offensive in Gaza. French President Emmanuel Macron says Israel is destroying its image and credibility worldwide because of civilian casualties in Gaza. Macron warned that Israel's actions in the war are backfiring, fueling international outrage and undermining its legitimacy. He said the scale of civilian deaths has severely damaged Israel's standing in global public opinion. Britain's biggest fundraising concert for Gaza has sold out London's Oval Arena, Wembley, with 12,500 people attending the Together for Palestine event. The 70 sterling a ticket fundraiser was organized by musicians and activists Brian Ono to support charities in Gaza and encourage celebrities to speak out. The lineup featured actors Benedict Cumberbatch and Florence Pugh, filmmaker Louis Theroux, and Palestinian human rights voices. Said venues once refused to host events with Palestine in the title, but attitudes have shifted as the humanitarian crisis deepens. The UN last month declared a famine in Gaza, blaming Israel's systematic obstruction of aid. Dozens of Yemeni families are mourning after Israeli airstrikes in Sanaa killed 32 media workers, among them veteran journalist Abdullah al-Bahri. The September 10th strike destroyed the offices of two newspapers in Tahrir Square, leaving 47 people dead in total. The attacks came amid escalating confrontation between Israel and Yemen's Houthis movement, which has been launching strikes on Israel in solidarity with the Palestinians. The UN Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, has announced he will step down after more than 6 years in the role, as Syria undergoes political transition following the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. Pedersen told the Security Council that Secretary General Antonio Guterres had accepted his resignation, citing personal reasons after years of services. He said progress in Syria once seemed impossible until Assad was toppled last December, ending 5 decades of family rule. Syria's UN ambassador Ibrahim Alabi praised Pedersen's role, saying he leaves on a note of hope as the country prepares for transitional elections and national dialogue. Pedersen also warned against foreign interference and condemned recent Israeli military actions in Syria. China has called on the international community to respect Syria's sovereignty and urged Israel to end military actions and withdraw from Syrian territory. At a UN Security Council meeting, China's envoy Fu Kong said Beijing and Damascus are friendly partners, stressing China's policy of non-interference in Syria's internal affairs. He proposed 3 steps: advancing an inclusive political transition, combating terrorism, and easing the humanitarian crisis. Fu reaffirmed that sovereignty and territorial integrity must be respected, adding that China stands ready to work with regional countries and the international community to promote peace in Syria and stability across the Middle East. Ukraine says Russian drones struck Kiev early Friday, triggering 2 air raid alerts and scattering debris across the capital. City officials reported fragments from downed drones damaged trolley bus lines and roads in central districts, including Shevchenkovsky. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko confirmed debris also fell in another part of the city. Authorities said that there were no injuries in the overnight attack, which comes amid Russia's continued campaign of drone strikes against Ukraine's capital. Russia says two of its nuclear-powered submarines have fired cruise missiles during naval drills in the Sea of Okhotsk. The Defense Ministry said the submarines Omsk and Krasnoyarsk launched Onyx and Granite missiles at sea targets more than 250 kilometers away. The drills held in the northwestern Pacific were described as rehearsals to secure maritime communications and strengthen naval defenses. The exercises come amid heightened tensions between Moscow and Western powers. U.S. President Donald Trump says the U.S. will help secure peace once the war in Ukraine is resolved, while urging Europe to cut its reliance on Russian oil. In an interview with Fox News, Trump acknowledged that ending the conflict has been more difficult than expected, but said he still believes a solution is possible. He added that halting Europe's purchases of Russian energy would be key to reaching peace as Moscow continues to fund its war efforts through oil revenues. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned of a global crisis as conflicts multiply, urging world leaders to use the upcoming General Assembly to push for peace and international cooperation. Speaking ahead of the Assembly in New York, Guterres said geopolitical divides are fueling impunity, with too many nations resorting to war instead of compromise. He called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza with the release of detainees, tough measures on Sudan, and reaffirmed the Palestinian people's right to self-determination. He said the movement demands determination and collective action, not despair.
Clear demonstration that the overwhelming majority of the countries in the world recognize the right of the Palestinian people.
China has stressed respect for Afghanistan's sovereignty after President Donald Trump said the U.S. was seeking to regain control of the Bagram base. Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian told reporters that fueling tensions and confrontation in the region would win no support. Trump said Washington was trying to get back the former U.S. stronghold, which was abandoned in 2021 when American forces withdrew and the Taliban took over. Kabul has ruled out any deal to return the Soviet-built base to U.S. control. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we've been covering. Israeli forces intensify Gaza City offensive as tanks push deeper. U.S. vetoes UN resolution demanding Gaza ceasefire and unrestricted aid. And the UN chief warns of global crisis, urges leaders to push for world peace. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.